I'm with Ohad Green. Now, Ohad, were you born here in Israel?
Yep, I was born and raised on a little kibbutz just outside Rehovot, about 40 kilometers south of Tel Aviv.
And you became a believer in Jesus?
Yep, about 7 years ago, I gave my life to Jesus. And first of all, let me start that life hasn't been better since. And my story is quite long, and it started when I was 11. I was a pretty rough boy. I was hyperactive. I was not doing very well at school, not doing very well with society. And I found myself hanging around with some bad crowd in Rehovot in a very, very bad neighborhood that later they tossed it down, they tore it off and rebuilt it, the whole thing. Started doing drugs when I was 11. Started with some hubbly bubblies, hash, grass, things like that. The age of 11, I started doing LSD and coke. At the age of 14, sorry. Started doing LSD and coke and a little bit of heroin. Started dealing when I was 15. Moved up the scale, and things really went well for me when I was about 17. When I hit a connection with some major mafia families in Israel. I became a bodyguard for a woman importer from Eastern Europe. I used to fly with him once a month to Moldova or Romania, Bulgaria, things like that. And we went once a month to Europe. I was strapped to a suitcase full of money, up to the biggest amount of money that I was strapped to was $2 million cash. Everything was done by consent, but we didn't kidnap no girl, nothing. Went, paid, went off. By that time, I started trafficking drugs around Europe a little bit and into Israel. And then that was when I was like 18, nearly going to the army. When I went to the army, I started my own line of importing from Lebanon because I was serving inside Lebanon. Every other weekend, I came into Israel with 5 kilograms of hash and 5 kilograms of opium. After the army, I moved to live in Eilat, started being head of security for the casino boats that there was over there. I was living the high life, you can say that. In a big apartment, lots of parties, girls, lots of money, lots of drugs. But the whole time that I was in Eilat, I felt that there was something missing. Everything was perfect, but it was the most imperfect thing at the same time. Then I met an English girl, and she got pregnant. She decided that I'm not a good father, so she took off. I just saw my son first time in my life about a month ago. And after she took off, I kind of went to the mountains over there. I took some time off everything. I was heartbroken. I did tons of drugs. I spent over a period of 2 weeks 40,000 shekels on drugs. And over there, I was in the mountains in Eilat for 2 weeks. Don't really know how I survived, just went down to the beach for a little bit, took some water, went up, because I didn't pack nothing. I just went with a sleeping bag. After about 2 weeks over there in the mountains, sat down on a rock. I screamed out loud that whomever calls me now, whomever answers me, that's the one I follow. But I need help, because I'm taking my life down the drain. And I said, I don't care if it's Muhammad, if it's Hare Krishna, if it's Buddha, if it's Jesus, if it's God, I don't care. Whomever answers, that's where I go. When I woke up in the morning, my body was working automatically. And I started walking, and I don't know where I was walking, and I don't know why I was walking, but I ended up right in front of the shelter in Eilat. The shelter is a believer hostel ran by John Pax. I didn't know the shelter before that. I never met John Pax in my life. And all of a sudden, as I sit down in front of the gate, John Pax opens the gate, says, "Hey, Ohad, I was waiting for you. Come have a cup of coffee." Went, you were waiting for me? I don't even know you. Said, "It's okay, come have a cup of coffee." So I'm drinking this coffee with him, and he starts talking about Jesus. Then I understand that Jesus answered me. And I started working. John Pax runs a Sudanese ministry over there. He helps the whole refugees that stays down there in Eilat with a youth program, with a lot of activities for them, and I was working with the youth over there and started getting reacquainted with the Bible and everything. I then about after 2 years, probably something like that, I moved to Tel Aviv, and a couple of friends of mine and myself, we opened a team that's called A Home with No People for People with No Home, which was kind of illegal. And what we did was breaking into squats, vacant apartments, fixing it up a little bit, and putting homeless people inside, mainly youth. And I did that for about 3.5 years, something like that. Gotten into a lot of troubles with the police because, I don't know, I guess nobody really cares. If you want to do something right, they don't care what you do. They just want you to do it the right way. And I didn't know how to do it. I just saw I needed and said, let's do it. About 7 months ago, actually a little bit before that, God kind of like pressed on me that, okay, Ohad, now you're doing the right things the wrong way. How about time to learn how to do the right things the right way? And then I started going around Pin Street with a group of believers, evangelizing and handing out sandwiches and coffees every Monday. And I met a guy there that knows Dave from the Door of Hope. And he said, like, I heard about your group and maybe you want to see like a nice shelter that there is around here. And he took me to John, to Dave. And as I entered into the door, it was exactly like God showed me. The counter was at the right place. The sofas was at the right place. The cabinets, the beds, everything, just like God showed me about the place where I'm going to learn to do the right things the right way. I'm working with Dave now for the past 7 months, something like that. My vision, God's vision for me actually, it's to open a runaway youth mission, which is on the progress right now, collecting funds and everything, which is going to be a home for them to share God's love. And this is something that's been put on my heart because I was that kid. And I know that when kids get into junctions in their lives, they have a very narrow vision and they only see one way out. I want to be there to show them the other way, that there is more than just one way. Actually, there is God's way and there's the wrong way. And this is what I'm planning to do. And that's my story.
Will you find it easy to talk to young people because you've been there yourself and you know what they're going through and the difficulties they face?
Actually, yes. This is God's gift for me. I have a pretty good mouth and I know how to reach people.
What's it like for you working with the drug people and prostitutes in Tel Aviv? Does your heart really break for them when you know what you've been through yourself and you know exactly what they're searching and how they're searching? How do you feel about that?
My heart breaks because it's a spiritual warfare, and I know for myself, after 11 years of doing drugs myself, God gave me the power to just toss it into the toilets and flush it, because it's one thing to get free from drugs and a totally other thing to get clean from drugs. To get free from drugs, it's only God. To get clean, it's just a week and a half. That's it. And it's heartbreaking that all the propaganda that goes around against Jesus, against God, against everything that is not traditional. But traditional ways have about 98% failure, according to their statistics. God's rate have 100% success.
Now, are drugs easy to come by here in Israel at the moment?
Depends where you go, but around where we work, getting drugs, it's easier than getting a pack of cigarettes.
And are there many young people on drugs at the moment in Israel?
In Israel, I'd say that 75% of the Israelis use drugs, whether it's alcohol, marijuana, or harder things than that. And from the youth, I'd say about 85% of the youth is using drugs. Drinking every weekend, smoking pot, doing that stuff. And a lot of them are doing like LSD. LSD is quite big in Israel. LSD is an ecstasy.
Now, when you think of Israel, you think of a very religious country. Why do you think people are turning to drugs and to alcohol and all these bad things?
Think of Moses. When Moses led the the Israeli nation, the Jewish nation, out of slavery in Egypt into the promised land. Everybody knew that he's doing a good thing, but when he went up to the mountain with God, then they didn't even have the decency to call him by his name. What is that man done to us? That's how they turned to him. Moses symbolizes most of all the strictness of the Old Testament, the old laws. And that is what they see around here. How everything is very, very strict, very, very to the point. There's no compassion there, there's no love. And actually that's why Moses never led the nation into the promised land. It was Joshua, who symbolizes the New Testament, how the love, the personal relationship between God and us as human beings. And that is why, because there is no love. They don't know what love is. They don't know what hope is.
Is there a lot of drug addiction and drug abuse amongst the religious Orthodox community?
Over there it's much more alcoholism. Alcoholism is the number one thing with the religious Orthodox, because it's kind of hard for them to do drugs because they're like 18 hours a day in their communes and everything, so it's hard for them to escape for that. But it's very, very common to find them sitting with Bibles and drinking their brains off on vodka. It's very common to see.
And what's your prayer for the people who seem to be caught up in this lifestyle?
My main prayer for them is to let God, with his river of running waters, of living water, just water out the seed that he planted. Let them realize that just like the story of creation, we can see that after the snake gave Eve the apple, and Eve gave it to the man, and they made their fig thingy, and they were hiding away in the garden. God was saying, man, where are you? He knew where man is, but that tells us that God seeks us before we seek him. There is hope for them. They just need to cut free from the blindness that Satan put in their lives. That's how I broke free.
Okay, Ohad, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.